Hello, Connective. Welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Subscribe, comment, and like without smashing anything, and let's get into this energy. This is a collective reading for Pisces. Pisces, you've already got your jumpers for your overlying and underlying energy. Something new happened in your reading. Nothing wanted to jump out of the Universal Law deck for the underlying energy, so you just have one card from the Akashic deck on that one. We stopped. I took that as that's the message. So you have one Akashic card for the underlying, one Akashic card for the overlying energy, and then you have one Universal Law for the overlying energy, and we'll get into that as soon as we get the energy cards to come out. It's giving me a little bit, but I think we're going to need some more from these other cards that are coming out right now. The card that came out for your underlying energy has been coming out a lot, and right now I'm a little hesitant to read it the same way it's been read. So yes, I would like some more cards on this one. Everything wants to be stubborn now. This is interesting. Oh, okay. Okay. I think I saw what flipped over, but I'm not 100% sure. I just saw the colors. We're going to go through this one more time. And if nothing else comes out, we're probably going to pull a few cards here. Not sure how many yet. Let's see what's up. Oh. That didn't make enough of a statement for me to figure out what card that was. So, here we go. They want me to pull. All right. I want to see this before I pull. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Okay. Here. Wow. Okay. Okay. Let's not. Let's let's do the overlying and underlying energy first. All right. Looks a little bit like a spiritual awakening. I was kind of trying to see where exactly this card tied in. So for the Akashic deck for the overlying energy, we had it's the Seven of Roses. It's the journey. So I was like, okay, well, we're going on a journey. I don't know what that journey is right now, right? This came out, the law of allowing. Stop trying to fix, change, or control anyone. So this is just a common thing that, like, you know, even if people aren't trying to ascend, a lot of times there are people who do try to control or fix. They might not even necessarily be, you know, considered control freaks or fixers, but that might be like, you know, when they jump into action, like that's where they jump kind of thing. This could be you. It could be someone else. I am picking it up as it's you, but I don't consider this to be like a heavy control or like, you know, somebody's like addicted to fixing or anything like that. We do have the Four of Roses, which are views of the ego. So with this one, this is like three people are staring into the mirror, and then the reflection of the person in the middle is staring back, but with ego. So it's kind of like you don't see it in the picture when they're looking in the mirror. You don't see the ego, but you do see the ego in the reflection. Not exactly sure where that's fitting in just yet. I mean, usually it's what we've been talking about is the ego. A lot of times in a spiritual awakening. Well, let's just address this. So in a spiritual awakening, a lot of times you'll be provided with many opportunities to let go of your ego. You know, everybody kind of knows what ego is or what ego means, but they don't really necessarily know how it plays into their life. Like someone might know what an ego is, but not necessarily knowing that they have like too much of an ego, or their ego is, you know, kind of like, you know, I was going to say accelerated or rampant, but, you know, because like people who have egos might not think they have egos. Like they might think it's, you know, when they're stating, you know, their sovereignty, that, you know, it's just their the word I was going to use was like they're being, no, I can't think about it. I mean, I know what word I want to say. A lot of times when I'm channeling, it's really hard to like switch back to my memory when I'm trying to like find a certain word that really says what I'm trying to say. And if I wait a little bit, or if I ask for it, they might give it to me. But I'm like, okay, give me the word, guys. When people are stating something and they think that they're just being true to their nature and they're just stating it, but they're really being rude. I don't know why I can't think of this word right now. But sometimes people think that like, oh, I'm saying it, but they don't realize that they're saying something with ego. You know, I guess ego would be sort of like relative. You know, if someone has no ego and then someone has a little bit too much ego, maybe not even a lot, but just a little bit more than normal, they might be, you know, they might rub that person the wrong way a little bit more than, say, you know, someone who had no ego, perhaps, just because, well, like I said, it's relative. So, you know, you get two people with big egos together. If anybody's seen what that looks like, then you know what we're talking about. Even if it's not a fight or anything major, even if it's just like in a game that has some kind of competition, you know what I mean? Especially if these people who have these egos are truly good at the game, then you kind of know what I'm talking about, right? Whereas opposed to the person who had no ego who goes into the game, they might even be really competitive, but when they lose, it's not like a big deal kind of thing. And again, not being able to lose in a game doesn't necessarily have to do with your ego. You know, it could have to do with anger or something else. But my point is that it shows up in many ways, and not everybody can necessarily see it, especially when it's inside themselves. It's almost like it takes somebody else to say, hey, your ego is kind of big, you know, for people to say, well, is that really true? Like the mirror has to like show it to them, kind of thing, right? So varying degrees of ego. I think when people hear the word ego, they're like, that's not me. I'm not egotistical. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. Everybody in a spiritual awakening is at some point going to battle with their ego, even if they don't have very much of it. You need your ego to get through life. You need to do certain things. You need your ego. The problem is that you want to make sure that your ego does not have control of you, you know, that it doesn't come into situations where it doesn't belong, and where you can kind of make decisions without your ego feeling like, you know, it's being slighted or something else kind of thing. That's usually just a few examples of what could get in the way, you know, with people. When they start to have a spiritual awakening, they start to kind of feel their ego slip away. They could feel very powerless. They could feel very insecure. They could kind of feel like they don't know who they are. I mean, we don't talk about it very much, but, you know, this is part of the reason why sometimes people can't really even handle their own spiritual awakening. It's, you almost have to like restructure your beliefs, and restructuring your beliefs about yourself can sometimes be very difficult, especially if you thought you knew yourself, but then you discover something about yourself, or you were never allowed to discover yourself to begin with. Other people would be telling you like who you are, kind of thing. So let's go through these other cards and see what else comes out. I would like something different to come out with the ego, but, you know, for the ego, but then again, it is views of the ego. So it could just be the way we look at it. Okay. So we have a few angels on the table, actually. I'm going to go back to that. Okay. So yes, quite a few angels on the table. So we're going to do seventh chakra, Archangel Uriel. So this is our crown. Crown chakra usually is our, you know, we're getting downloads, we're understanding, we're ascending, or we at least know what's going on, we're trying to ascend. Okay, so we also have sixth chakra, Archangel Metatron, which is our third eye. So this is our intuition. This is, you know, getting intuitive hits on what's going on. Maybe we know that we're in a spiritual awakening because, you know, we can see things changing, or we can see ourselves changing. I mean, a lot of times things start to move around us. We start to see things a little bit differently. We start to realize that there's something going on, even if we didn't know we were in a spiritual awakening. We also have second chakra, Archangel Ariel. So usually I take this as like our creativity, our passion. Maybe in the beginning of our spiritual awakening, we can find more things to be happy about, to look into and find out about our spiritual awakening. It's a little bit exciting. Sometimes when we discover new gifts, that can be exciting. You know, going forward and saying, I always wanted to know about this, and then looking into it, but looking at it through different eyes. Like a lot of times this can be like the fun part of spiritual awakenings too. We also have the Angel of Strength, which usually reminds us of the not so fun times of a spiritual awakening, when our gifts become a little bit scary or our environment becomes a little bit scary because we are in a spiritual awakening and things are changing. Again, I didn't see energy all my life. When I started seeing energy, I had to ask, oh, do I need to go to the hospital? I mean, again, I can go up to 100 people and ask them if they see what I see, and if they don't, does that mean that I need to commit myself? This is a little hard sometimes. This is kind of like what I'm talking about. Sometimes the ego can kind of get in there, and spiritual awakenings can be a little bit hard, and I feel like sometimes some people just don't make it. I've seen people decide not to enter into their spiritual awakening. They kind of turn around and go the other way. You do have a choice if you don't want to do it. You know, I don't know if you get that choice again, or if it's later on it's forced. If you agreed to something and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this, you know, it could be that you could say no a couple times, and then the third time you have to go forward. But I have seen them walk away. I haven't necessarily seen them come back. But even when you don't walk away, you're in it. Maybe you don't know you're in it. But even if you know you're in it, sometimes it's so hard that sometimes people just don't make it through. You know, it could be a little jarring. And I feel like if you have less of an ego, like if you had less of an ego to begin with, you could almost take it a little bit easier, because you're not so hard on expecting a certain thing to come, or expecting it to come a certain way, kind of thing. And again, this is just like mild references to what we're talking about. We're not talking about, you know, fighting the spiritual awakening to the point where we're anti, like what you would be if you were working a spiritual awakening, like rude, or, you know, like, again, like we said, egotistical, you know, terrorizing the people around us. We're not talking necessarily about that, but this does fall into all those categories. The ego can be very small or very big. So it just depends on how much you know about it, how much you're paying attention to it, how much of an ego you have, how it's getting in the way, if it's getting in the way, or how it's helping you. It can help you. You can use it to help you. This is kind of like what we're talking about when we're talking about the journey. The journey isn't like, we go where we want to go, right? And then this is saying to us to stop trying to fix, change, or control anyone. So again, when we do go in that direction, we go in that direction, not necessarily trying to control it. Again, good luck trying to control your spiritual awakening. That's all I can tell you. So we also have the door to value. The door to value for me is anything that you ever could want, anything that you value. So not anything specific. There is like money and stuff flying through this doorway right now. It could be money, but again, there's other stuff flying through this door right now. It could be anything. So we have a door. We have carrying connections. So usually this is what we're moving towards. This could be something that we're in right now. And then we have anxiety. I'm going to put anxiety over by views of the ego. Figure out what's going on there. Door to value. Okay, so it just, you know, it really just still looks like kind of like spiritual awakening on the table. The journey probably is the spiritual awakening, and the ego is probably something that we have to either deal with or let fall away so that we can move forward in the spiritual awakening. I mean, we have 4 angels on the table and a door. Let's see what Alice has to say about this. Sometimes this is where we get the indication that somebody else's ego is messing us up. Based on this is the Alice the Wonderland deck is usually what I say, like how we view the situation. And so sometimes when cards come out that look like things might not be a little fair, sometimes that's not necessarily your ego. See, that could be too why nothing came out in the underlying energy from the universal law deck, because there's no universal law that you need to use to deal with your ego. This is probably not your ego. All right, I think we have enough cards on the table. Okay, so we have forget who you are. Forget who you are. It's I was gonna call it my deprogramming card. It's the conditioning falls away, memory no longer defines you. So this is kind of like you've been told something, or maybe you told yourself something, it's a possibility, it's not true. Now you have to go back and figure out what is true so that you can deal with things, you know, real. Mortality. Life is brief, bright, beautiful, and yours to live. Ah, what is that? Mortality. This might be a person. We have carrying connections on the table. I don't think this is a current person. Okay, so follow your own good advice. Trust yourself. You know what is best for you. So a lot of times this is like us wanting to get away from something or get away from someone. And again, like we're being told something different so that to either keep us there or make us like keep us there. In other words, having us be there, you know, for longer or to be there to begin with. And then also have like keeping us there as far as like when we're ready to leave, we can't leave. So being stopped from actually getting away from it, keeping us there. Sometimes we don't realize necessarily that we're keeping ourselves somewhere until we realize kind of like the belief behind it. We might feel like we're stuck, but then we make a decision and then all of a sudden we're not stuck. That was us sticking ourselves. That wasn't someone else keeping us stuck. Yes, people can control and manipulate to the point where you are stuck. And a lot of times too, when that's happening, when people are controlling and manipulating around us, our first instinct is to want to go and try to control and manipulate that situation because we want to fight fire with fire. But some of us who aren't very good at controlling or manipulating, we already know we can't win that battle. And then some of us who control and manipulation is not like part of who we are. We can't even really do that. So it's one of those things. And then we feel powerless. We feel like we're stuck. We're like dealing with somebody else's ego and it's causing anxiety because we don't know how to deal with that. A lot of times once we figure out how to deal with somebody else's ego, we do not get stuck and we do not stay stuck. This is where I'm at here. Everyone is a little different. So usually I'm picking this up as like, when you're in a situation and there are other people involved. So let's say there is a person with ego, but then there's other people involved. A lot of times when we look around and the other people that are involved aren't complaining about the person with the ego, then we still kind of feel stuck because we're like, well, nobody else sees it or nobody else is complaining about it or it doesn't bother anybody else. It's just me kind of thing. Especially if the people around you are like, what are you talking about? Like that, I don't feel that way. Or, you know, like say if it was a boss and you go, I just really don't think they like me. And they're like, what do you mean? They're nice to everybody. Or, you know, something like that. That card is kind of like, okay, well, the person with the ego is, you know, a little cuckoo. And then the people that are around that don't see it are a little cuckoo too. Just because you're the only one that sees it doesn't mean that it's not going on. If you don't have much of an ego, you might take that on as like, you don't know what's going on. You're just uncomfortable. It's not true. People love to convince themselves of whatever it is that they can convince themselves so that they don't have to end or move forward in this situation. Much, much easier to gaslight yourself into believing that there isn't a situation that needs to be fixed than to actually put the energy into fixing the situation so that we can effect a better change, right? This mortality card is on the table. It's not really saying like relationship, and we have carrying connections, but I pick up carrying connections as like good friends too. You know, so we have the door to value and we have good friends. And then we have all these angels on the table. And usually, I mean, I don't see any cards for it yet, but angels show up for light workers. You guys, you know, Pisces, you guys could be light workers. There's a lot of angels on the table. Usually I don't get that many. Let's see what we got here. All right. Oh, okay. So full moon in Taurus, detoxify. So there might be a Taurus involved with you, Pisces. Detoxify. I mean, that's part of like forgetting who you are. A lot of times we have to get rid of that so that we can move forward into carrying connections so that we can get closer to what we want, what we're giving other people. We want that back. Last quarter moon in Sagittarius, practice gratitude. So I always say we're always manifesting, but we're manifesting here on the table. We're manifesting this stuff right here. We need to be grateful for the things that we have, even if they come with stuff that brings us like anxiety. There's certain things. I always say, like, even if we're in something that we don't want to be in, there's always something that we want to keep about it. We don't necessarily realize when we wish it away that we're letting go of those things that we want to keep about it too. Again, if this is a relationship, we could be wishing away a person, but wanting to keep some of the things that that person brings. This is what I'm talking about. When you practice gratitude of the things that are coming that you do want to keep in that relationship, when you move forward into the next relationship, you're more readily available to get those things in that new relationship. They're not stuck to that person. Just because that person was in a relationship and bringing whatever it was that you want doesn't mean that if you leave that person, you're not going to have it. There's a good possibility that you already have it without that person. Sometimes, again, people have us believing that we don't bring what we bring to the table when we're giving our all in relationships. They get this idea in our heads that we're not giving enough and they're doing everything and this and that and the other thing, and this is why we're being treated badly, and this isn't necessarily true. This is part of the journey of, okay, well, I have to be faced with this to realize what I'm bringing to this relationship. Okay, I totally get that. Part of the problem with that is that we think that everybody's the same. We think that everybody's like us. We come in there in the relationship bringing everything, our whole heart, everything, and then other people are like, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do this, and then we start to feel down on ourselves. When we get to the point where we're tired of listening to the BS, we go, now, you know what? I know what I bring. I know what I bring, and I know what you bring. And I'm going to get away from you because you keep telling me something else. And I'm going to go towards something that brings what I bring. We know it's out there, even if we've never seen it. And then this is full moon in Pisces, forgive. This is a message to you, Pisces. Whether or not it's your ego, whether or not it's someone else's ego, if your ego is getting in the way of you forgiving someone in a situation in the past, or yourself in a situation in the past, you cannot bring that with you to get your caring connections and your door to value. You got to forget who you are. To a point where you can forgive. Again, forgive yourself, forgive someone else, and detoxify, because those are the two main things right now. You can't bring the toxicity with you. You can't bring the ego with you, even if you didn't have it and you're trying to match somebody else's ego. You can't take that with you. And then you have detoxify. So actually, I feel like these are the most important messages on the table. Practice gratitude, forgive, and detoxify. So Pisces, I'm ready to pull the blind spot because this doesn't seem too terrible. I mean, even with the ego. But I want to see what might be getting in the way. I mean, we do have an ending. We have anxiety. A reason for an ending. We have stuff we're moving towards. We have all these angels like protecting us. And then we're being told to follow our own advice, and that the people around us might be a consensus, but they might not be coherent. So Pisces, if this is your reading, meet us over at the extended. And if not, until we meet again,